Join me for a very festive game hunt as I restart a collection I tried to quit so many times and start a brand new collection here in the fine city of Norwich.
Game Pickers! Food in the Games Room! Rush Trips! Live Game Hunting!
Hello again folks and welcome back to a very special live game hunting episode. That's because it's starting to look a lot like Christmas. Snow is falling all around us this time as we hunt in the fine city of Norwich. It has been absolutely ages since I've hunted right here in Norwich, and it is amazing how much can change for the better and sometimes for the worse over time. So fingers crossed this time we can find something awesome here in my home city. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit that like button and please subscribe as I put new videos out every Saturday night at 5 as well as bonus content throughout the week, and I really want you folks along for the ride. Now, let's get our snow boots on and get hunting. The hunt this time is going to be in the Anglia Square region of Norwich, an area which has sadly slowly gone downhill over the years, but this area normally hides a very good selection of charity shops. But sadly, I haven't been here for over a year on the hunt, and I was greeted by a lot of empty shops. I would say 4 or 5 charity shops that were here 12 months ago are sadly no longer here, which is a real shame, but thankfully some do remain, such as this packed animal sanctuary one here, which is where we're going to start our hunt this time. And straight away there is lots of DVD box sets, and DVDs are hidden here are 10 for £1 or as priced, but sadly there was nothing I could find in here, just 1 or 2 PlayStation 3 games, and these were all filler titles. But this is what you expect in 90% of charity shops, but it does make it so much sweeter when you find something cool. And hiding at the back of the store were some more Blu-rays, more kind of manly section I would say of the charity shop here, but once again nothing we really needed. Some cool titles but nothing I needed today, so I did pass. I always check for cool t-shirts in the charity shops, but this one I was not expecting. This Sex and the City t-shirt. I'm sure somebody wants this out there, but today it ain't me. Heading on, and I narrowly missed being attacked by a gang of vicious pigeons, and also noticed 2 or 3 more of my favourite charity shops down here had closed, which was a real shame, as over the years I've found some absolute bangers in these charity shops, including the Joel edition of The Last of Us here in this charity shop, which is sadly no longer. Undeterred though, let's carry on the hunt. Another charity shop and another massive DVD section, but this time we have got a small selection of PlayStation 3 games, and I always check these out, and if they're decent prices and I need them for the collection, I'll pick them up, such as this game right here, Sniper Ghost Warrior, for just £2. I haven't got it in the collection, and for that price I'm happy to pick up. But there are some decent titles here: Call of Duty, Gran Turismo, Battlefield, all games I already had in the collection, but I've said it for many years. Charity shops are still a brilliant way to pick up bargain games like this for your collection, especially for Xbox 360 games. Charity shops are still some of the cheapest places to shop. One thing I love to shop for in charity shops is vintage Levi's jeans. Unfortunately, these weren't my size, but for £10, this is an amazing way to pick up some cheap designer jeans, so it's always worth keeping an eye out for these in charity shops. These are 3 amazing stores in Anglia Square in Norwich: Beatnick's, Aladdin's Cave, and this RSPCA charity shop. All 3 of these are normally full of bangers, and head to the charity shop first, and they had a decent selection of DVDs, CDs and Blu-rays, but unfortunately it does seem like the pricing here has gone a little bit on the high side. Normally when I'm picking up DVDs and Blu-rays I'm looking to pay 50p or £1, which I think is a fair price in charity shops, but most of these were like £4 or £5, which honestly I think for charity shops is overpriced, and I believe that more times than not at these prices they will just simply sit on the shelves. I think for charity shops they need to price low so they can move stock quickly, and unfortunately this time these prices were a little bit high, which was a shame, as I saw this Blade Trilogy box set up here, which I've traded in many times before into CX, but unfortunately for this price I just had to leave it behind, but that's what happens. Next door is Aladdin's Cave, and that's exactly what this store is: an Aladdin's Cave of treasures that is ever changing. Pretty much you name it, you will find it here. This is a collection of cabinets all owned by different sellers selling their wares. Everything from antiques to collectibles, action figures, video games, furniture. Like I said, you name it, it's here. And this first cabinet, stacked with Star Wars stuff, really caught my eye. But what I was looking for was a cabinet which always used to be full of video games in here. I used to come in here all the time, and there used to be some amazing hidden gem video games. Like I said, they sell everything here, including tiny bottles of Guinness. But sadly, it seemed like the seller who used to sell their video games here sadly sells here no more, which was a real shame. But that's both the beauty and the curse of a place like Aladdin's Cave. It is ever changing. You can see here, there's absolutely stacks of comic books, but more interestingly for myself, opposite, there was lots of strategy guides. But this is one of the disadvantages here of Aladdin's Cave. A lot of these items are not priced. You have to wait for the people running the store to contact the seller to ask for the prices of these items. And honestly, today we are on a finite timetable and the hunt needs to continue. But maybe I'll have to go back in the future, as honestly it's been a long while since I've seen this many strategy guides in one place. Next door to Aladdin's Cave is Beatnick's, a record store which also sells DVDs and, more importantly for ourselves, games. They had a really good selection of both retro and modern games. So you can see here some really good prices on these PlayStation 4 games, a tiny Xbox One section, but it's more the retro we're looking for here. So as we move through some pretty decent PS4 titles, we get to the PlayStation 3 section. Only a small handful of Switch games here, but these were really good prices. And there were some interesting games here in the PS3 section, including this game right here, Sniper Elite V2 Game of the Year Edition, and also the standard edition of the game, which thankfully was cheaper than the Game of the Year Edition. But it's really the retro we're looking for here at Beatnick's. And what surprises me is how big a selection of Black Label PlayStation 1 games they have here. There were some really good titles here, but unfortunately a lot of these were missing the manual, such as Theme Hospital. If that had the manual, I would have probably picked that up, as there's some good titles here, including Warhammer Dark Omen, a game sadly I already own, because honestly it is getting harder and harder for me to find Black Label PlayStation 1 games that are missing from my collection. And there were some really good games here, games you don't see very often, like Street Fighter 2 Puzzle Fighter, which again was sadly missing the manual, or I might have picked that one up, because honestly I'm still a completionist when it comes to PS1 games. I'm always looking for them to have the manual, and sadly this time most were missing it. Back to the charity shops, it doesn't take long to find some more video games. These were £2 each for some very common OG Xbox games. But I do wonder, in years to come, if games like this are going to get harder and harder to find for what I believe is a very unloved console. In the same store were some very vintage board games, including this copy of Risk with that iconic artwork, and this game at the back here, which didn't really catch my eye for the game, but for this sticker right here. Who remembers Blue Peter jumble sales? Heading a little further down the road, we come to this Oxfam charity shop right here, and I have found so many cool things here over the years, and this jumped out at me straight away. These vintage Power Rangers Zords, but the price of these was a little bit high for my liking. Carrying on, and we had something that all people dread to see when they head to a charity shop, a vintage clothing section. But honestly, I was pleasantly surprised. There was some reasonably cool vintage clothes here, but these were also affordable. Normally when a charity shop marks their clothes as vintage, it goes up double, triple, sometimes even 4 times the price you'd pay for like a standard t-shirt in a charity shop. So honestly, this was a nice surprise to see here. Heading to the DVD section, there was a very small selection of games here, nothing too exciting, but I had clocked something from the street outside. So you can see here, there's just 1 or 2 kind of standard, fairly common PlayStation 2 games, but on this stand here, we have some decent PlayStation 2 titles, the kind of games you would not see in the charity shop very often. Yes, these were priced a little bit higher, but honestly, there were some decent prices on these decent titles, like Akami, absolutely incredible game. These were in absolutely fantastic condition. I was quite tempted by the Skyrim guide, but for £10 I did decide to leave it behind. But I've saved the coolest thing from this Oxfam store for last. This vintage WWE Rock t-shirt. It was $29.99. And if it had been my size, I would have picked this up in a heartbeat. It was beautiful. Then suddenly out of nowhere, it was Christmas time in Norwich. The snow started falling, the temperature dropped, but nonetheless, I was not giving up the hunt. I just hunkered down, put my hood up, head down, and headed on to our next stop here on this very festive Norwich game hunt. Our next stop was Surplus Trading, a shop which used to be situated just up the road, but they've moved to this bigger premises and it is still absolutely stacked. They have a brilliant selection of video games, music, vintage toys, everything that I love. And straight away I was jumping into the video game section here. Some pretty interesting PlayStation 3 games, but nothing I needed this time for my collection. But there was some really well priced bangers here, including, I think, the game which has the most use of the F word over the length of the game, House of the Dead Overkill, an absolute classic. Some cool steelbooks here with the Call of Duty Ghost steelbook, some really nice Xbox 360 games, and it's shops like these where you can still find cheap Xbox 360 bangers. A little collection here of Xbox One games. Once again, these were all absolutely fantastically priced. And then we had some heavy hitter toys. Once again, for the second time today, some Power Ranger Zords. And it amazes me how expensive some of these can be, but they were very cool to see. Heading onwards into the snow, up the road we have an absolute institution here in Norwich. Checking out the window here, we start to see a few video games, and this store is of course Second Hand Land here in Norwich. I'm sure this store has been here since the dawn of time, and inside it was absolutely packed once again with tons of Xbox 360 bangers. And I think it is stores like this where you can still find a good deal on these games. But sadly, much like the PS1, my Xbox 360 collection is almost complete. I would say I have around 90% of the Xbox 360 games which I want for my collection, because luckily I bought so many of them so many years ago when they were super cheap. But like I said, it is stores like this where you can still find some absolute bangers, and it's always worth checking these glass cabinets in case you can get some brilliant games super duper cheap. And there was a massive selection of not just games in here but also consoles, like some really good prices for consoles, which is really nice to see. It seemingly is getting harder and harder to find cheap, decent condition retro consoles, but I guess we're lucky places like this still exist. Then a festive miracle took place. The YMCA charity shop, which I feared gone forever, had simply moved round the corner, and I was straight to the DVD section, as this charity shop always had one of the largest selections of DVDs in any charity shop in Norwich. But it wasn't DVDs I found, it was VHS tapes, and I have sworn off collecting these so many times, but if there's one thing that can get me back into collecting something, it's Star Wars. And there was some incredible Star Wars VHS tapes here, and I just had to pick them up, as well as this, which a very friendly couple pointed out to me, this incredible Darth Maul money bank. I love this. Snow is falling all around us. We're concluding our hunt, this time where it began at Anglia Square, and I've saved the best for last. A toy shop which I've been meaning to visit for a very long while, Sutton Toys. And trust me, this place did not disappoint. Straight away, as soon as I walked through the door, I was met by a wall of incredible Star Wars figures, and trust me, this is just a tip of the iceberg. What an amazing way to start here at Sutton Toys. Turtle figures for just £3.50 each. This one caught my eyes straight away. This transforming Shredder, an original Playmates figure. Very difficult to put back together, but I was sure this one was complete. But let's see what else is hiding in this basket here. Honestly, £3.50 for any vintage figure, especially turtles, is absolutely amazing. And that is one of the main things which blew me away about this store. The prices here were absolutely fantastic. There was also a really good selection of comics and books in here, including this Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook 3. Now, this was a vintage book, and for the price, this was really nice. I absolutely love these old D&D books. They just look so cool, especially the artwork is absolutely amazing. Next up was the rest wrestling figure section, and there was a very large selection of WWF Hasbro figures here at Sutton Toys. And once again, I was blown away by the pricing of these. These are slowly getting more and more expensive, but £6 for both members of the Legion of Doom is an absolute bargain. And yes, I'm starting a new collection. I have been meaning to start collecting for these WWF Hasbro figures for so long, and at these prices, I just can't resist. I'm sure it's the start of a slippery slope, but I love me some wrestling. Do you know I also absolutely love Pogs? I think these were unofficial milk caps, but these were super cool. And I have heard on a grapevine that Pogs are making a comeback, and I, for one, are here for it. Now, I'm not the biggest Transformers fan, but this is one I do already have in my collection because I love anything Jurassic Park. And here we have some more Turtles figures, this time TMNT NECA figures. I've said many times here on the channel, I love NECA TMNT figures, especially these animated figures right here. They are so cool. For my money, NECA just make the best modern action figures on the market, hands down. These were super cool. Some ones I'm definitely missing from my collection, and I'll definitely be back in the future to pick up probably all of these. As well as toys, Sutton Toys also sell video games and consoles. There were some really cool consoles here, including that Atari 2600, some awesome PlayStation 1 memory cards, Xboxes, GameCubes, just a little bit of everything. And like everything we've seen so far here at Sutton Toys, the pricing on these was really good. It's only a small selection of video games here, but it's definitely a case of quality over quantity. And again, these prices are absolutely fantastic. That's one thing that just blew me away about this store. I know I've said it multiple times, but so many stores these days just seem to charge above eBay prices, especially above CEX prices. So it's nice to see a store where you can still find some absolute bargains. And there's some really cool video games in here, including this game, 2 Point Hospital, which I've been playing a lot recently. And I would say, if you're a fan of the old school games like Theme Hospital, it's definitely worth checking out. Comment down below which is your favourite of the fantastic coloured N64 consoles. Even though the Great Purple is a thing of absolute beauty, for me, I think it has to be the Jungle Green. That console just hits differently. And here in the glass cabinet of dreams at Sutton Toys, there was some absolutely incredible games, consoles, and especially PlayStation 1 games. There were some really good titles here, and I was really impressed by the selection of games and toys here at Sutton Toys. It's a shop I haven't been visiting anywhere near enough, and trust me, it will not be long until my next visit, as this time blew me away. I almost missed this WWF Jakks Pacific wrestling ring. I know so many people hated this toy line and were so pleased when they lost the license, but for me, it's just so synonymous with the Attitude Era, and is quite possibly why I love this underloved toy line. Another toy line which I absolutely love is the Aliens Kenner toy line. It's so strange to me still, all these years later, that they made a toy line of a film which was rated 15 here in the UK, but what an amazing toy line it was. I don't know what it is about Kenner toys in the mid to late 90s, but they were absolutely incredible, and honestly, these power loaders are one of my favourites. There we have it then, folks. That was a very festive game hunt here in Norwich, and 2 brand new collections started. Let's head back to the games room and warm up. Here we are then, back in the games room after an absolutely freezing and very snowy game hunt here in the fine city of Norwich. And it's a little bit of a sombre hunt this time, as it is amazing how many charity shops have closed over the space of about a year since I last hunted in this part of Norwich. But now more than ever, it is important to hit up your local charity shops. We still managed to find some awesome bits this time. Starting off with this game right here, Sniper Ghost Warrior for the PlayStation 3. These are the kind of games I love to kind of find in charity shops. They're normally £2 to £3 games in CX, but for £2, I was happy to grab this one for the charity shop. It's finally happened, folks. I've tried to avoid it all over the course of 2024. I have quit it so many times, but it does appear I am back collecting VHS tapes. I tried to fight it, but I just couldn't fight it anymore when I saw all of these VHS tapes in that charity shop, which is an amazing charity shop, which I thought we had lost to time and had just moved round the corner. And I couldn't believe my luck when I saw some tapes which I've been looking for a very long while. So starting off, we have Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. All of these tapes were just £1, and these are in absolutely incredible condition with all of the inserts as well. And I still remember buying these tapes. I remember seeing these Star Wars films in the cinemas. And we also have Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. I just love these kind of gold boxes. These for me are absolutely iconic. And speaking of iconic, an absolutely iconic 90s movie, Austin Powers. Me and my wife recently rewatched the entire Austin Powers trilogy, and suffice to say, I still think it's absolutely hilarious. And then, probably my find of the day, the best Star Wars trilogy on VHS. And here is the thing. This Star Wars trilogy has been chopped, changed and remastered so many times, but this is the first, to my knowledge, widescreen edition. So we have the OG Star Wars, and these tapes, I think the artwork on these is absolutely beautiful. And of course I've checked these, the tapes are in incredible condition. I love the artwork on these so much. Then we have Empire Strikes Back. Again, breathtaking artwork, and for £1 each, these were a real bargain. And this is a different version of Star Wars than you will find now online. These films, as I said, have been chopped and changed. This is my favourite colour, Return of the Jedi, absolutely iconic so many times, and this is one of the only ways to watch this version of these films. And here's the thing, I paid £3 for, without a doubt, the most iconic trilogy of all time. I think on eBay this can set you back anything from £20 to £30, and I'm afraid, folks, it looks like we are back on the wagon VHS collecting. But that's not all. From that same charity shop, we have one more Star Wars themed pickup, this Darth Maul money box. And shout out to the couple who pointed this out to me. I think they were going to pick it up, but they said, you look like a Star Wars fan. As I had my arms full of Star Wars VHS, they said you would probably prefer this to me. So massive shout out to them. I love these OG kind of Star Wars pieces of memorabilia, and for £3, I had to pick this one up. Which brings us on to our final pickups this time, and a store which I've been meaning to visit properly for absolutely ages. And finally today, the stars aligned and I was able to visit Sutton Toys at Anglia Square in Norwich, and I was blown away. They had so much cool stuff, and I managed to pick up some absolute bargains from there. So first off, I have this vintage Playmates TMNT Shredder figure. This is one of the transforming figures, and you can see he turns into the kind of drill transporter. This thing was actually incredibly difficult to transform, but inside it does have Shredder. I'm not really sure how you even transform these. I definitely prefer it like put together as the transport drill. And the other pickup we have to start another collection, one which I've been putting off for far too long, and now it is finally time to start collecting Hasbro WWF figures, with these two figures for my collection for just £6 for both of these. We have the Legion of Doom, and these are in absolutely fantastic condition. With a lot of these, the paint will chip and fade over time, but these are in absolutely amazing condition, and for just £3 each per figure, it's an absolute bargain. And trust me, if you are a retro toy collector, you need to head to Sutton Toys in Norwich. It is absolutely packed with incredible retro, and honestly, I'm already excited for my next trip. There we have it then, folks. That was a very festive game hunt here in the fine city of Norwich, and honestly, it feels so good to be back. I have travelled all around the UK over the course of 2024, but you know what they say, there's no place like home. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe, and as always, keep playing the game. See you soon.